Scotland is to let pupils aged 4 or 5 change gender or gender identify to the gender of their choice without their parents' consent. And if, say, a little boy says, I'm a girl, the Scottish government has told them, ordered them to start treating that little boy like a little girl. The Scottish Education Secretary, Shirley-Ann Somerville, said, this guidance outlines how schools can support transgender young people while ensuring that the rights of all pupils are fully respected. Now, I don't want to infringe on the trans issue and on the trans rights campaigners, but is it just me, Kelly, or is this barking mad?
Well, it's beyond barking mad, isn't it? Barking mad would maybe be a little respite from actually the harmful and danger promotion of this ideology throughout schools, on the BBC, pretty much everywhere small children can look. And so I think it's just such a bizarre overreach. The state has nothing to do with this sort of education of children. I don't really know when they are Scottish parents if this was a desirable thing for them to do. I don't believe those questions have been asked. But it's a really dangerous and harmful agenda, which ultimately leads to the sterilisation and the eradication of sexual function for young adults. So it's I think it'd be nice just to leave it at barking mad, but it really is quite dangerous.
I mean, you can't. It's a 4-year-old. 4-year-old, say a little boy said, I want to be a girl. You go, of course you do. Go on, go run along, have some fun. Same the other way around. And now this is now being enshrined almost in law, that teachers then have to say, oh, this 4-year-old has said that he's not a boy, he's a girl. So we have to treat him as a girl. Have the parents been told it's nothing to do with them? It's just to do with the school and the state. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it is really infuriating. And I think when it comes to these ideas about treating them as a girl, I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Like,
for a kick-off, Kellie-Jay, you have to, if the little boy says, I'm a girl, you have to start saying her and she.
It's just absolutely bonkers. I wish the grown-ups would come back into actually power in schools. It feels like schools have been totally ideologically captured by organisations like Stonewall. There's all these pride champions, and we started to make this sort of ideology something as if there's been a national conversation and consent has been granted, when actually all that's happened is all these little backdoor meetings where nobody's allowed to know what's going on. These policies are just rolled out en masse. Parents have nothing to do with this whatsoever. And we've even got the case now where if your child goes home and says that their gender is not being, if at school they say their gender is not being affirmed at home, you can now be reported to the authorities. And in countries like America and Canada, you can actually be criminally convicted for some sort of abuse, violence against the family, if you don't affirm your child's gender. And if we don't think that's coming here, I think we're quite foolish and naive, because it is coming.
It certainly seems like Scotland's in line for it. When you're talking about a 4 or a 5-year-old kid, I don't want to disrespect children in any way. I love children and all that. But you don't take what a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old says about his or her life plans all that seriously, do you? Well, surely, if somebody wants to transition, if they want to change gender or identify as a male or a female, in later life, after puberty, when they're adults, I mean, sure, by all means, do it. But we can't let a 4-year-old decide that, surely.
No, and what's also quite dangerous about this is these ideas about consent and about what children know. Now, does that mean that my friend's 11-year-old daughter knows that she's fallen in love with Nigel, who's 45 down the road? Is she allowed to consent to that? Are we then going to be giving children consent above lots of different issues in their life, or is it just actually their biological sex that we allow them to consent on? And for me, it's none of it. Like you, Kevin, I think kids are kids and they require parents for a reason, and that's because actually they don't know much, and they need to do a lot of growing before they can make any serious decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was a kid, my younger sister much to mine and my brother's amusement. Her and her friends went through a phase, I think they were probably about 7 or something, where they all decided they were boys. And they gave each other boys' names, I think were kind of what they used to call tomboys. And they did this for about 6 months, and we thought it was hilarious, and of course then they got bored with that and moved on to their next phase. But under Scottish law, probably my brother and I would have been arrested for disrespecting their desire to identify as boys. I mean, childhood is different to adulthood, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there's a real profound harm when we say to a child, yes, you're right, your body is wrong. I think that is a really significant harm. And some of the ex-staff at the Tavistock talk about, as soon as you affirm that that child is right to say their body is wrong, the damage is done, and they're on a pathway really to continue pretending or identifying as the opposite sex. And so where it used to be a sort of 80% desist rate when those children got to puberty, if you're now affirming from the age of 4, do they even have a chance ever to say, actually, mum and dad or teacher, I got it wrong?
Exactly. Now, you're a parent, Kellie-Jay. What do you think about the idea that Scotland has said that if a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old says, I was born in the wrong body, I may ostensibly look like a girl, but I'm a boy, that is a decision that is immediately enshrined in a kind of law, and it has got nothing to do with the parents, that the parents are not allowed to have any say in this. This is a matter for the school and the Scottish state. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a serious erosion of parental rights. And I think we ignore these warning signs at our peril. Especially if I'm in Scotland by now, as soon as they go back to school, which I think they go back earlier than the rest of the UK, I'm probably going to be standing outside of the school gates, handing out leaflets and fighting tooth and nail and attending any governor meeting. I'd be writing to the governors. I'd be letting my parliamentarians know that this is categorically not anything that any parent wants. It doesn't even matter whether you are really liberal and that you do think people can genuinely transition in adulthood, or whether you're not. It's about small children making decisions that will have nothing to do with you, and even worse, you don't even have to be told.
And where do we go from here? I mean, because what worries me about this is that it happens in Scotland. It may come down to England, Wales. There's a kind. How do sentient adults come to a decision like this? I mean, it just strikes me as absolutely impenetrable insanity.
Well, to bring up our recent conversations, I'll tell you how it happens. It happens by Ofcom saying that everybody has to call anybody that calls themselves a woman she, and you have to go along with it, and you can't question it. And if you do question it in your place of work, you can be disciplined. It happens because we've given up our duty of care and safeguarding around children, and so we're letting people that have nothing other than an agenda to push to actually come into our schools and take over some of our duty of care. And it's just, what is it, death by 1,000 cuts. I think it's just constant incremental creep on safeguarding and, I don't know, common sense.
Well, yes, common sense, exactly. I mean, it just seems to me that this kind of diktat amounts to a kind of abuse of children. Because, they're not responsible for themselves. They should not be responsible for this kind of decision. That's down to parents. This madness is a form of child abuse.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is child abuse. It is the mass grooming of children. We've got BBC doing it. They constantly promote these programs that talk about 7-year-olds. There was a 7-year-old in France recently who's transitioned. His mother had admitted during pregnancy she'd wanted a girl. It's a really sad story. I think there's a lot of parents that don't really know what on earth they're doing. They don't trust their own instincts. They've forgotten to be adults. But yeah, I agree with you. It is mass grooming, and it's definitely child abuse.
How much longer are you in Antigua for, Kellie-Jay?
about another 4 glorious days.
What's the weather like?
Well, we just had what they call a liquid sunshine storm, which was about 5 minutes of rain,
Yeah.
and now it's about 31 degrees.
Well, that's right. Make me jealous. Trust me, you're not missing much back here. Pleasure to talk to you. Let's have a chat when you get back. Have a lovely rest of your holiday. Kellie-Jay Keen there, women's rights campaigner, standing for Women Leader and Leading Feminist. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and this is Talk Radio.